Hello, everyone. What a pleasure to be back in Winnipeg for this important triennial gathering of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. C'est un grand plaisir d'être de retour à Winnipeg et je suis toujours très content de prendre vos questions.
Prime Minister Cam McIntosh, CBC. Today, Ottawa's former police chief is criticizing CSIS for not providing enough upfront information about the protest convoy. Wondering if that's a concern that you share, and is it time for reform in CSIS?
Every day we're hearing new testimony about what happened over the course of the invocation of the Emergencies Act and the illegal blockades that were seizing Ottawa and indeed places right across the country. We called this inquiry so that Canadians could see exactly why it was needed to invoke the Emergencies Act and how, when we invoked it in a way that was responsible, limited, and targeted on solving the problem as quickly as possible. We thank the Commission for its ongoing work. We thank everyone who's participating. I asked from the very beginning to be allowed to appear, to share our perspective on this. This was an important and difficult moment in Canada's history, and it's important that the right lessons be drawn.
En français, s'il vous plaît, comment est-ce que le programme d'obligations financières, comment est-ce que ça va aider les Ukrainiens?
On sait très bien que l'Ukraine a besoin de ressources militaires, humanitaires, mais aussi financières, pour payer la fonction publique, pour payer l'armée, pour continuer de faire fonctionner l'économie ukrainienne dans des situations inimaginablement difficiles. C'est pour ça que le Canada a envoyé plus de 2 milliards de dollars en prêts pour aider le gouvernement ukrainien à continuer de fonctionner, pour tenir tête contre la Russie. En même temps, on entend à tous les jours que les Canadiens veulent en faire plus. Les Canadiens veulent pouvoir aider et contribuer directement. C'est pour ça qu'on est en train d'émettre des obligations de souveraineté ukrainiennes pour pouvoir que les Canadiens puissent investir et envoyer de leur argent à l'armée ukrainienne, tout en faisant des investissements qui vont leur rapporter dans les années à venir. Donc c'est un prêt que les Canadiens peuvent faire directement, garanti par le gouvernement du Canada, au gouvernement ukrainien pour aider maintenant. Et on voit déjà qu'il y a énormément d'intérêt et d'appui dans la communauté pour cela. Ukraine needs support. Ukraine needs support militarily, which we're sending on the humanitarian side, which we're doing, but they also need financial support to keep the lights on in the government, to continue to deliver paychecks to public servants and militaries, to continue to effectively function as a strong democracy despite the horrific and unconscionable invasion by Russia. That's why Canada has been there with all sorts of different supports, including around $2 billion in loans to the Ukrainian government as a way of ensuring that they can continue to stand so strong and courageously against Russia. But I've met with Canadians from coast to coast to coast who said, we want to do more, we want to help. And Ukraine sovereignty bonds backed by the government of Canada is a way for Canadians to contribute directly to helping the Ukrainian government stand against Ukraine by buying bonds that send money to Ukraine now and getting a return on those bonds 5 years from now. It's a way, one more way Canadians are going to be able to stand with Ukraine.
Mr. Prime Minister, will there be any funding from the federal government for provinces like Manitoba to pay for the services being provided for Ukrainians who are here, and more to come?
We have been partners with Ukrainian settlement programs across the country, including here in Manitoba, and we will continue to be there as partners. We understand the number of Canadians, of communities right across the country, but particularly here in Manitoba, who've been opening their homes and their communities to people fleeing the violence in Ukraine and looking for a place to be safe while their loved ones, in many cases, continue to fight against Russia. We will continue to work with all provinces to ensure that there is support for families who come to be here. It's something we're all in together, and I salute again all the families in Manitoba who've been stepping up to welcome Ukrainians and showing how we stand, not just with Ukraine, but with the democratic principles and values that make our world strong.
Hi, Prime Minister. Another question about the inquiry in Ottawa yesterday. There were text messages released yesterday that showed the RCMP commissioner was telling the OPP commissioner that the government of Canada was losing confidence in Ottawa police, and they suggested that perhaps the Emergency Act was being considered as early as February 5th when these text messages were being exchanged. What did your government say to give her that impression, and why were you apparently considering the Emergencies Act as early as February 5th?
As you all know, the Emergencies Act inquiry is going on, and every day there is important new testimony for commissioners and Canadians to take in and reflect on. It's really an important process because as soon as we invoked the Emergencies Act, we knew there would be a public inquiry to look into how it was going, that we would call. We called it. I offered to appear. I'm looking forward to appearing before the Emergencies Act to be able to share answers to these and all sorts of other questions. It's really important for Canadians to see that when a measure of last resort like the Emergencies Act is used, it is used appropriately and responsibly. We ensured that we would bring it forward in a responsible, targeted, time-limited manner, and that's exactly what we did. But this commission is also there to show Canadians that it was used properly and that it delivered the things that Canadians needed it to deliver.
Rod Nickel with Reuters. Prime Minister, about the bonds, how much do you hope they will raise? And in your discussions with other leaders, which other countries do you think might do the same thing?
We know that the support for Ukraine is strong across democracies around the world because we see not only the heroism of Ukrainians as they stand and fight to protect their own homeland, but that they are standing up for the principles that underpin all of our democracies. And that's one of the many reasons why so many countries are stepping up to help Ukraine in such unprecedented ways as they stand against Russia. Ukrainian sovereignty bonds are a way for Canadians to directly contribute to the fight against Russia, to support for the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian government. And we're very much looking forward to seeing many Canadians take it up. We know that conversations are ongoing with other countries around the world to ensure that citizens can also directly support in this important fight against Russia. But I'm happy to turn to the Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister to respond as she moves forward with this Ukrainian sovereignty bonds.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. So, look, I'm not going to place a limit on the generosity of Canadians right now. We have been working closely with the Ukrainian Canadian community, but also other interested Canadians in putting this together. And I have a lot of faith in the generosity of Canadians and in their conviction that this is a fight where the Ukrainians deserve our support. So I'm hopeful that it will be strongly supported. In terms of other countries, we've spoken obviously with the Ukrainians. I spoke this week after the Prime Minister took his decision. I spoke this week with Serhiy Marchenko, the Ukrainian finance minister, and Denis Shmyhal, the Prime Minister. They are very enthusiastic and very supportive. And the money will be going through the IMF-administered account that then directs it to the Ukrainian government. That provides a level of transparency and integrity. And that account was actually set up by Canada in collaboration with the IMF to provide a way to get money directly to the government of Ukraine, which, as the Prime Minister said, has these really challenging operating expenses like paying pensions, keeping the lights on. We've worked with other countries to support that operating account. Germany has contributed to it significantly, and other European countries are planning to do so. And we're sharing with them our plan on these sovereignty bonds. Other countries have been exploring how to do something like this, but it's quite technically challenging. I'm pleased that Canada's the first, and I'm really hopeful that the Canadian example will inspire others. And maybe just the last thing to say is these bonds are issued by Canada, but they can be bought by non-Canadian financial institutions. So in issuing these bonds, we are already creating an opportunity for people outside Canada who want a very transparent, direct way to contribute to the government of Ukraine to do that.
Canada hasn't put a cap on how many bonds it would
As I
be.
said, at this point, we're going to focus on giving Canadians a chance to be generous and directly support the people of Ukraine.
One for Minister Anand, if I could.
Of course.
Are there any circumstances under which the Canadian forces could be deployed to Haiti to either take back territory or combat gangs?
Well, let me start by saying that we partnered with the United States last week to make sure that armored and other tactical vehicles were delivered to Haiti, and that multinational effort is continuing. I spoke with my counterpart, Lloyd Austin, this week, and we discussed the situation there. For Canada's part, we are making sure that we have all information before we take a decision. And so at the current